President Trump believes he can replicate the success of Richard Nixon's diplomatic overture to China in the 1970s. He seeks to drive a wedge between Russia and China, drawing Russia closer to the United States. This strategy rests on a flawed understanding of both history and the current geopolitical landscape. The world today is fundamentally different than it was during the Cold War. Russia and China are no longer ideological rivals, but strategic partners bound by shared interests and a deep distrust of the West. Trump's approach, reminiscent of a bygone era, ignores the complexities of the present-day relationship between these two powers. His strategy, therefore, is not only unrealistic but potentially dangerous. It risks further alienating Russia, pushing it even closer to China and cementing a bloc opposed to the United States. This miscalculation could have far-reaching consequences for the global balance of power, undermining American interests and leadership in the 21st century. Richard Nixon's opening to China was a remarkable feat of diplomacy. It exploited a growing rift between China and the Soviet Union, pulling China out of its isolation and into the global order. This strategy was successful because of the unique circumstances of the time. The Sino-Soviet split, rooted in ideological differences and competing national interests, created an opportunity for the United States. China, facing economic stagnation and threats from its northern neighbor, was receptive to American overtures. Nixon seized this opportunity, normalizing relations and establishing economic ties that would transform China into a global power. This move had a profound impact on the Cold War, shifting the balance of power and ultimately contributing to the collapse of the Soviet Union. However, the conditions that allowed for Nixon's success no longer exist. Today, Russia and China are not rivals but partners, united by common interests and a shared worldview. The relationship between the United States and Russia since the end of the Cold War has been characterized by mistrust and missed opportunities. A series of events from NATO expansion to the war in Iraq have fueled suspicion and animosity between the two former adversaries. The expansion of NATO eastward, despite assurances to the contrary, was perceived by Russia as a betrayal and a direct threat to its security. The interventions in Serbia, Iraq, and the support for pro-Western movements in former Soviet republics further deepened this sense of encirclement and resentment. The 2014 Ukraine crisis and the subsequent sanctions imposed on Russia by the West cemented this adversarial dynamic. These actions, seen by Moscow as aggressive and provocative, pushed Russia further into the arms of China. The cumulative effect of these events has been to create a deep well of distrust between the United States and Russia. This history of animosity makes it highly unlikely that Moscow would be receptive to any overtures from Washington, especially under the current administration. The relationship between Russia and China has undergone a dramatic transformation in recent decades. From wary neighbors, they have evolved into strategic partners, united by common interests and a shared desire to challenge the existing world order. This partnership is built on a foundation of economic interdependence, military cooperation, and a shared vision for a multipolar world. It is a pragmatic alliance driven by national interests rather than ideological affinity. China, with its growing economic might and global ambitions, sees Russia as a crucial partner in its quest for greater influence. Russia, facing Western pressure and economic sanctions, views China as a vital counterweight to the United States. This convergence of interests has led to an unprecedented level of cooperation between the two countries. They conduct joint military exercises, share technology, and coordinate their foreign policy positions. The bedrock of the Russia-China partnership is their growing economic interdependence. China has become Russia's largest trading partner, a vital source of investment, and a crucial market for its energy exports. This economic relationship deepened significantly after the 2014 Ukraine crisis. Facing Western sanctions, Russia turned to China as an alternative market for its oil and gas. China, eager to secure its energy supplies, was happy to oblige. This interdependence has created a strong incentive for both countries to maintain their partnership. Russia is reliant on Chinese demand for its energy exports, while China benefits from a stable and reliable supplier. This economic bond is further strengthened by growing investment ties. Chinese companies are investing heavily in infrastructure projects in Russia, while Russian companies are seeking access to the vast Chinese market. Beyond economic interests, Russia and China are united by a shared ambition to challenge the existing world order and diminish U.S. hegemony. They view the United States as a declining power seeking to maintain its dominance through military interventions and economic pressure. Both countries advocate for a more multipolar world, where power is more evenly distributed among different centers of influence. They have sought to create alternative institutions to the Western-dominated ones, such as the BRICS group of emerging economies and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. They have also coordinated their positions on key international issues, often opposing the United States and its allies. This includes their support for the Assad regime in Syria, their opposition to the U.S. missile defense system in Europe, and their criticism of Western sanctions against Iran. This shared vision for a new world order provides a powerful ideological underpinning to the Russia-China partnership. It suggests that their alliance is not merely a marriage of convenience, but a strategic choice driven by a common worldview. Recent developments have further solidified the Russia-China partnership, casting further doubt on the viability of Trump's strategy. Despite the ongoing war in Ukraine and the pressure it has placed on their relationship, Moscow and Beijing have reaffirmed their commitment to their strategic alliance. China has refrained from condemning Russia's actions in Ukraine, instead calling for dialogue and a peaceful resolution to the conflict. This neutral stance, while not explicitly endorsing the invasion, has provided tacit support to Russia and underscored the strength of their partnership. Moreover, economic ties between the two countries have continued to grow, with China emerging as a key market for Russian energy exports that have been sanctioned by the West. This economic lifeline has proven crucial for the Russian economy, demonstrating the depth of their interdependence. These developments suggest that the Russia-China partnership is resilient and capable of withstanding external pressure. It highlights the futility of Trump's strategy, which is based on an outdated understanding of the relationship between these two powers. Trump's strategy to split Russia and China is doomed to fail, because the United States simply lacks the leverage to pull Russia away from its partnership with China. The current geopolitical landscape is vastly different from the Cold War era, and the incentives for Russia to align with the United States are minimal. Russia views the United States as an adversary, a perception deeply ingrained by decades of mistrust and animosity. The expansion of NATO, the war in Iraq, and the support for pro-Western movements in the former Soviet Union have all contributed to this sense of betrayal and hostility. Moreover, Russia and China share a common interest in challenging U.S. hegemony and creating a multipolar world. They see their partnership as a way to counterbalance American power and advance their own geopolitical ambitions. In this context, any attempt by the United States to peel Russia away from China is likely to be met with suspicion and resistance. Russia understands that its interests are best served by maintaining a strong partnership with China, a rising power that shares its worldview and its desire for a more equitable global order. Trump's strategy to drive a wedge between Russia and China is a miscalculation of historic proportions. It is based on a flawed analogy to the Cold War era and ignores the fundamental realities of the 21st century geopolitical landscape. This misguided approach risks backfiring spectacularly, pushing Russia and China closer together and solidifying a bloc opposed to the United States. It undermines the potential for cooperation on critical global issues, such as climate change, nuclear proliferation, and pandemic prevention. In a world facing unprecedented challenges, the United States cannot afford to cling to outdated playbooks and simplistic solutions. A more nuanced and pragmatic approach is needed, one that recognizes the complexities of the Russia-China relationship and seeks to engage both countries constructively. Failure to do so will have profound consequences for the United States and for the world, leading to a more unstable, unpredictable, and dangerous future for all.